What's up, guys, and welcome to the second episode of Hunt Recap. As you probably guessed after watching the episode last week, in this episode we're going to be talking about hunting in the swamp. After growing up in Michigan, there's no question we have more experience hunting swamps than any other terrain type. This episode's going to be short and sweet. We're going to talk about Kev's hunt in northern Michigan and then get into some general trends we've observed over the years hunting in the swamp. So to start, let's dive into Kev's hunt that you saw in the episode last week. You can see here that this strip of swamp ran north and south and had higher ground with oaks and browse to the east and the west. You can see how vegetation looks a little more mature in this little section that runs east and west across the swamp. And when you're e-scouting swamp areas, this usually indicates slightly higher ground that's usually drier. And these land bridges are great concentration points, and this is what Kev was targeting that evening. He had a west-northwest wind that night and made the assumption deer would be bedded on the leeward edge of the land bridge. This sets them up to get up out of bed and move into the wind out to the higher ground in the evening. He accessed from the south with a just off wind from bedding and set up on the southwest side of the land bridge. We never went and looked to confirm exactly where bedding was, but deer movement happened exactly as he hoped. They got up out of bed somewhere over here and moved into the wind across the land bridge heading out to the higher ground. This was early in October, so deer were bedding like this mainly based on food sources, but this same thing happens during the rut. The only difference is bucks are setting up on does. Does are still hitting food sources though, so it sets up almost exactly the same. This is a buck Kev killed later in the year, but this time Kev caught him in the morning coming back to bed. You can see the slightly higher ground here, and this is an area Kev scouted and confirmed bedding. He had a north wind that morning, and the night before there was a west wind, so he assumed deer got out of bed and moved to the west that evening prior. So that morning he accessed from the southeast and set up on the south side of bedding on a just off wind, hoping to catch a buck jay hooking from the southwest. And that's exactly what happened here.
Tagtown, Michigan, baby. Man, I don't think I got the shot on camera. He came in cruising here pretty quick, right behind me, straight on.
And here's another example of swamp bedding during the rut, this time on an evening hunt. You can see the higher ground here to the west that dumps off into the swamp. The predominant wind in the area is a west wind. During the rut, it can be southwest or northwest. That evening, I had a west-northwest wind, so I accessed from the southeast. Bedding was right here, leeward to the higher ground. And does usually bed closer to the higher ground, at least that's what we've observed, and then the bucks would bed downwind from where they're bedded. I set up right here, and at last light I had a doe and a small buck get up and move into the wind, headed to the higher ground. Right after they moved past me, I threw out some grunts and doe bleats, trying to capitalize on the sound of them walking through the swamp. And you'll see here that the dominant buck in the bedding area that night couldn't resist the competition and came out looking for a fight. So let's quickly summarize the main points here. Number 1, leeward bedding adjacent to higher ground. No matter the stage of the season, bucks and does have an evening destination in mind. Because line of sight is minimal in the swamp, they have to be able to use their sense of smell to safely exit bedding. This concentrates bedding in the swamp to leeward bedding areas just off higher ground. And number 2, bucks bed downwind to doe bedding during all phases of the rut. This is something we've seen over and over again, and it's fairly obvious but extremely important to understand because it's a great opportunity to get a shot at something. And this applies to all terrain types. the dominant buck in the area will fight to bed at the downwind edge of the bedding area. This allows him to closely monitor doe bedding, so he's the first to know when does go into estrus. This also allows him to catch other bucks trying to infiltrate his doe group. And finally, number 3, and this is somewhat specific to Michigan because of our dominant buck to doe ratio that greatly favors doe numbers. Most Michigan public land areas will have one dominant buck that controls the best bedding area. If you find one of these bucks, it can feel like he's a ghost. You know he's there because of sign or trail camera data, but you just aren't able to get an encounter with him. One thing we've observed in this situation is does actually going to the buck so he doesn't have to move much. This video is hard to see, but I sat this bedding area one morning and watched 5 does go in and out of this bedding area as if they were checking to see if it was their turn.
We had that doe peel off of here, go into there, and then we just at 150 had another doe move off of this bedding here down into there. They usually filter through here and go out to the high ground to eat peanut butter and honey sandwich. Carbs, protein, delicious.
Ultimately, the does want to breed with the dominant buck, and that's why we always see so many small bucks chasing does around. So that sums up the second hunt recap episode. As always, thanks a lot for checking out the videos. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions or requests on specific information, drop a comment on this video and we'll get an answer to you as soon as possible. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week for part 2 of our Northern Michigan hunt.